My sister got everything growing up. Then Grandma left me $450,000 in her house. Now they're calling me greedy and dead to the family. My name is Elena. I'm 29 years old, and I've spent most of my life standing in the shadow of my older sister, Sophie, who's now 31. From as early as I can remember, it was obvious I wasn't the favorite. Sophie was. She got everything handed to her. The latest phones, stylish clothes, expensive trips with her friends. If she so much as hinted at wanting something, my parents moved heaven and earth to give it to her. Meanwhile, I learned to rely on myself. At 16, I started working part-time at a local cafe. Every paycheck, I'd stash a little away, saving for college for clothes for my future. I figured out quickly that if I wanted anything in life, I had to earn it myself. And it's not like our family was struggling financially. My dad worked as a sales director, and my mom was a school administrator. We had a solid middle-class life. But for reasons I've never really understood, they chose to spend their extra money on Sophie and told me that I needed to learn the value of money. Even college wasn't fair. They covered every cent of Sophie's tuition for her fancy private university, 6 years for a degree in communications. Me? I got into a state school with a partial scholarship and had to take out student loans to cover the rest. No help from them. Still, I made it work. I double majored in finance and computer science. Landed a solid job straight out of school. Paid off my loans in just 5 years. These days, I work as a software developer in financial systems. I earn a 6-figure salary, rent a small apartment, drive a no-frills car, and put money aside every month for savings and investments. Sophie? She's not doing great. She's bounced from job to job, maxed out credit cards, still leans on our parents to bail her out. Right now, she's working at a marketing firm, but never stops complaining about how overworked and underpaid she is. The only person who ever really saw how unfair things were was my grandma, my mom's mother. She noticed the difference. She felt it. Whenever she could, she'd take me out shopping or slip me money for books or clubs my parents wouldn't pay for. She showed up to every school event, every graduation, and never stopped telling me how proud she was of how independent and driven I'd become. She was my rock, my quiet cheerleader, the one person in my family who always made me feel like I mattered. 3 months ago, my world shifted again, this time in a way I wasn't prepared for. My grandmother passed away. She was 87, and until the day of her stroke, she'd been sharp as ever. Full of life, always reading, still walking every morning around her block. Losing her, it hit me harder than I could describe. The funeral was small, quiet, and heavy with grief. Everyone wore their pain differently. I stayed mostly silent, my heart torn between loss and gratitude that I had someone like her in my life at all. 2 weeks later, we met at the lawyer's office for the reading of her will. I walked in feeling numb, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. My grandmother had divided her estate with surgical precision. Her house, left to me, Sophie would get $25,000. My parents, $10,000 each. And then the rest of her savings and investments, about $450,000, was left to me as well. There was a letter she'd written, tucked in with the will. The lawyer read it aloud. In her own words, my grandmother said she left the majority of her estate to me, not just because she trusted me to handle it responsibly, but because she wanted, in her words, to finally balance the scales. She had seen how I was treated. She saw what my parents didn't, or wouldn't, and she wanted to make things right in the only way she could. She even revealed that she'd given Sophie financial help multiple times over the years, gifts we'd never known about, and that most of it had been wasted. When the lawyer finished reading, the silence was deafening. My parents looked like someone had pulled the ground out from under them. Sophie? She broke down crying, shouting that it was unfair and accusing Grandma of favoritism. I just sat there stunned. 100 emotions ran through me at once. Grief, disbelief, and this deep, quiet ache that she'd had to fix something she didn't break. The moment we stepped outside, it exploded. My parents cornered me, demanding, lecturing, telling me to do the right thing, and split the money evenly with Sophie. They claimed Grandma must have been confused, manipulated, that she wouldn't have done this if she were of sound mind. But she was. I know she was. She was more clear-eyed than any of them. Sophie swung between crying and accusing me of turning Grandma against her. I told them all the same thing. This was Grandma's decision, and I would honor it. They didn't like that. And when I reminded them, through clenched teeth, that if they hadn't spent my whole life making me feel like I was second best, maybe Grandma wouldn't have felt the need to balance the scales in the first place. That's when things really fell apart. After that explosive argument outside the lawyer's office, everything changed. I didn't hear from my parents or Sophie for a while. At least, not in any real sense. Just angry text messages, passive-aggressive jabs, a constant stream of guilt-tripping. But the silence in between those messages was almost louder. It's been 3 months since then. I moved into my grandmother's house, my house now. It's still surreal walking through her front door, the scent of her favorite vanilla candles lingering faintly in the hall. I'm slowly renovating, room by room. New paint, new flooring. But I've kept little things that remind me of her. Her favorite teacup, the Afghan she crocheted, her photo in the living room, right where she used to sit and read. As for the money, I didn't waste a second. I hired a financial planner and created a plan. Most of it is now invested, some for long-term growth, some for retirement, and a portion tucked away for something I've dreamed about for years, starting my own business. Meanwhile, Sophie already blew through her $25,000. That didn't take long. She paid off some credit card debt, sure, but then she went on a luxury vacation. A spa resort to help her grieve, she said. And of course, a shopping spree to numb the rest of her pain. Now she and our parents are right back where they started, and they've picked up right where they left off, demanding that I share the inheritance. They don't even ask anymore. They expect. They say I don't need all that money, that Sophie needs it more, that I'm being cold, that I'm tearing the family apart. But the truth? The family was never whole to begin with. I've stopped responding to their messages. It's not easy cutting off the people who raised you. But what they don't understand is that this inheritance isn't just money. It's the first time in my entire life that someone in this family told me, "You matter. You are worth protecting. You are enough." And I'm not letting that go. For years, I kept my mouth shut. I stayed quiet while Sophie was handed everything and I was told to be grateful. I watched my parents cheer her on while I worked nights just to pay my tuition. I swallowed every hurt feeling, every overlooked achievement, every time they forgot my birthday, but threw Sophie a full-blown party. Not anymore. This house, this money, this peace, it's mine now. Because she gave it to me, not out of guilt, but out of love, out of recognition, out of justice. I didn't ask for this war. But I won't lose myself trying to keep the peace in a family that only values me when I'm giving something up. If I thought the fallout would settle into silence, I was wrong. So wrong. After the initial fury, my parents and Sophie shifted tactics. When they realized I wasn't going to just hand over the inheritance, they turned to what they do best, control the narrative. They started calling extended family, mutual friends, whispering behind my back, twisting the truth. According to them, I had stolen Sophie's rightful inheritance, that I'd manipulated Grandma in her final years, that I was breaking the family apart for money. And they didn't stop there. Last weekend, they showed up at my house, unannounced, and all 3 of them together. They must have thought strength in numbers would break me. They came prepared with some rehearsed speech about family unity, about how Grandma wouldn't want this rift. My mom cried. Sophie sniffled dramatically. My dad stood stiffly, arms crossed, delivering the same tired lines about doing what's right. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "After everything we've done for you, Elena, this is how you repay us?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked him, calmly, to name one major thing they had ever done for me that they didn't do twice over for Sophie. He blinked, fumbled, said something vague about putting food on the table and a roof over your head. Basic parenting, the bare minimum. I told them, firmly, to leave. They didn't move. So I picked up my phone, dialed the police, and let them hear it ringing. That got them out the door. But not before Sophie screamed that I was dead to her, and my mother clutched her chest like I'd physically hurt her, sobbing that I was breaking her heart. That night, I changed all the locks. Had a security system installed the next morning, just in case. I've also started seeing a therapist. Because even when you know you're doing the right thing, it doesn't make the grief any easier. You don't just lose people, you lose the version of them you hoped might still exist. But in all of this, one thing has kept me going, the memory of my grandmother, of her quiet strength, of the way she always saw me when no one else did. And then, something unexpected happened. My great-aunt Helen, Grandma's younger sister, called me. She'd heard whispers of what was going on and wanted to hear my side of the story. For the first time in this whole mess, someone asked to hear me. I told her everything, and when I was done, she sighed and said, "Your grandmother knew this would happen. She told me last year she was worried they'd never treat you fairly. That's why she made everything so specific in her will. She wanted to make sure you had something for yourself. Then she told me something I never knew. Years ago, Grandma had given my parents a large sum. Money meant for my college education. But they used it for Sophie. That was the last time she ever gave them money directly. After that, she put funds in a trust for me, but by then, I'd already found my own way through school. I sat there in stunned silence, phone pressed to my ear, tears rolling down my face. All this time, I thought Grandma just understood me. But now I knew she had fought for me long before I even realized it. And I'm not going to dishonor that fight. This inheritance isn't about greed. It's about justice, about finally being seen. And I refuse to let guilt, manipulation, or public pressure steal that away from me. Just when I thought things might finally settle, my parents and Sophie found a new stage for their drama, the internet. It started with vague posts on Facebook, cryptic little quotes about betrayal, greed, and family who turns their back when money's involved. Subtle enough to dodge policy violations, but obvious enough that anyone who knew us knew exactly who they meant. Then Sophie took it a step further. She launched a GoFundMe. The title? Unfairly Disinherited. Please help me rebuild. She spun this heart-wrenching tale about losing her beloved grandmother, only to be cut out of the will by a manipulative family member, me, who poisoned Grandma's mind in her final days. According to Sophie, she was left destitute and unable to pay her bills. The kicker? She even mentioned needing help with rent. This from the same woman who had just returned from a luxury grief retreat in the mountains and posted pictures of her $800 handbag. I didn't respond publicly. I refused to sink into the mud with them. But privately, I was livid. I reached out to a few close relatives who had been blowing up my phone with concerns. I calmly shared the full truth. The will, the letter Grandma had written, the years of favoritism, the fact that Sophie had already received tens of thousands of dollars, including her own portion of the inheritance. Most of them quieted down after that. But I knew this wouldn't go away on its own. So I went to Grandma's lawyer and had him send a formal cease and desist letter to my parents and Sophie. It laid everything out in black and white. If they continued making defamatory statements, there would be legal consequences. It worked. The vague social media posts disappeared. The GoFundMe vanished, not that it raised much. Last I checked, it had barely broken $200, mostly from Sophie's close friends who probably didn't know any better. Still, the damage had been done. Even after the drama calmed down, I could feel the tension hanging in the air whenever I walked into a room full of extended family. But there was a silver lining. For the first time, I saw clearly who was truly in my corner, and who never was. The people who took the time to ask for my side, who listened without judgment, those are the ones I'm keeping close. And something else happened too, something that caught me off guard. I got an email from my mother. It wasn't an apology. Not exactly, but it was the closest thing I've ever gotten from her. She wrote that maybe they'd overreacted to the will, that perhaps they should have handled it differently, that they missed me, and that they wanted to move forward as a family. No mention of the screaming, the guilt trips, or the trespassing. No acknowledgement of the years they spent putting Sophie first. But part of me still felt something, sadness, grief, hope maybe, a small voice whispering that people can change, even if it's slow. I haven't written back yet. My therapist and I have talked a lot about this. About boundaries, about grief, about the idea that sometimes people apologize not to make things right, but to reset the table without acknowledging the mess they made. She told me if I do respond, I should protect my space. Meet somewhere neutral. Maybe even bring a mediator. And most importantly, don't go in expecting them to finally understand everything. Go in knowing who I am now and what I will and won't tolerate. Because here's the truth I've come to accept. I don't need their approval anymore. I don't need them to finally say you were right. And I don't need to make myself small just to keep the peace. A few weeks after that email from my mother, I made a decision. I agreed to meet with them, just my parents, not Sophie. I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. We chose a cafe near my office. Public, neutral, safe. I arrived first and chose a table by the window. My heart was pounding. Part of me still wanted to turn around, go home, and pretend this meeting never happened. But I stayed. Not because I owed them anything, but because I needed to know, for myself, if there was even a chance of something worth salvaging. They arrived together. My mom looked like she hadn't slept in days. My dad looked like he was rehearsing a speech in his head. I started before they could. I'm not here to talk about Grandma's will, I said. That's done. I'm here to talk about whether we can have any kind of relationship moving forward, and if so, what that looks like. There was a long silence. Then, something I didn't expect. My dad broke down. He started talking, really talking. Not yelling, not lecturing. Just admitting things. He said that yes, they had favored Sophie. That she had always been the squeaky wheel. That she needed more help, made more noise, demanded more attention. And that they convinced themselves I didn't need them the same way, because I was self-sufficient, quiet, capable. I sat there stunned. For the first time in my life, I was hearing the truth I had always known, but never thought they'd say out loud. He looked at me, tears in his eyes, and said, "We thought we were doing the right thing. But now I see, we failed you. And I'm sorry." My mom didn't cry. She's never been the emotional type. But she did nod quietly, her voice small when she finally spoke. "I guess I just didn't realize how much we hurt you," she said. "You never complained." I looked at her and said, "Mom, I did. You just didn't listen." She didn't argue, just looked down at her coffee. It wasn't a magical fix. It didn't undo years of damage. But it was something, a crack in the armor, a moment of clarity. And that was more than I ever expected. We agreed to move forward slowly, respectfully, on my terms. I told them I wouldn't tolerate any more conversations about the inheritance. I told them they were welcome in my life, but not in my house. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And I told them if they wanted to rebuild a relationship with me, they needed to stop trying to force one between me and Sophie. And speaking of Sophie, about a month later, she showed up at my workplace. Drunk. She caused a scene in the lobby, slurring her words, yelling about how I owed her. My coworkers had to call security. It was humiliating, not just for me, but for her too. She didn't even realize how far she'd fallen. After that, my parents stopped pushing me to reconnect with her. My dad even said, quietly, she needs help. It was the first time I'd heard him say something like that without trying to shift the blame onto someone else. Since then, things have been tentative. My parents and I have had dinner together a few times. We stick to neutral topics. Work, food, weather. It's awkward, sure, but it's also progress. And I can see the effort, especially from my dad. He even called me last week just to ask how I was doing. No hidden agenda. No guilt trip. Just a father checking in on his daughter. I don't know where this will go. I'm not naive enough to believe we're magically healed. But I'm open to something new, something healthier. And with Sophie, I set my boundary, and I'm holding it. I told my parents that I'm not open to a relationship with her until she gets real help. Not another vacation. Not another loan. Help. Therapy. Accountability. An actual apology. Not just for what happened after the will, but for everything before it too. So far, that hasn't come. And honestly, that's okay. Because I've finally learned that peace doesn't come from keeping everyone happy. It comes from choosing yourself over and over again until it stops feeling selfish and starts feeling like survival. In the quiet that followed all the chaos, I started to focus on something that truly mattered, honoring my grandmother. She was more than just the woman who left me a house and a sum of money. She was the only person who ever made me feel fully seen in a family that always looked past me. And now that she was gone, I wanted to keep that spirit alive, not just for me, but for others who'd been made to feel invisible. While sorting through her belongings one afternoon, I found an old wooden recipe box tucked in a kitchen drawer. Inside were faded index cards written in her neat, looping cursive, dozens of recipes, notes in the margins, little jokes in parentheses. Holding those cards felt like holding pieces of her heart. So I've been cooking through them one at a time. Filling the house with her cinnamon rolls, her slow-cooked stew, her favorite apricot bars. The smells, the memories, they bring her back to life in the walls of this house. But I wanted to do more than just remember her. I wanted to continue what she stood for. I took $20,000 from the inheritance and used it to start a scholarship fund at my old high school. It's for students interested in STEM who demonstrate financial need. The kind of student I was. The kind who's smart, driven, but overlooked. The kind who needs someone to say, I see you. I believe in you. I kept the donation anonymous, but the school sent me letters from the first group of recipients. One of them, a girl who's planning to study biomedical engineering, wrote that the scholarship meant she wouldn't have to work 2 jobs her first year. She said it gave her space to dream bigger. I sat at the kitchen table with that letter in my hand and cried. Because I knew, in that moment, that this was what my grandmother would have wanted. Not just money in a bank account, but impact, opportunity, quiet, steady support for someone who just needs a chance. And then, I went a step further. After talking with my financial advisor, I decided to expand the scholarship. I committed $50,000 to create an endowed fund, one that would renew every year, helping students long after I'm gone. It felt right, like something that would echo forward. A continuation of my grandmother's quiet generosity. At the same time, my relationship with my parents, especially my dad, continued to slowly improve. We now meet about once a month for dinner. It's still awkward sometimes, but it's no longer painful. He's apologized a few more times, unprompted, for specific moments from my childhood. Like the time they bought Sophie a new car for her 21st birthday and told me to save up when mine broke down. Each acknowledgement feels like a stitch, mending a part of me I thought would stay torn forever. My mother's more reserved, but she's trying too. She brings over fresh vegetables from her garden, emails me family recipes. Her way of saying, "I'm here," without fully saying the words. I still haven't let them into the house. That line remains. But the conversation is open, and that's more than I ever thought we'd have. As for Sophie, she's still distant. We haven't spoken since that incident at my office. My parents say she's in counseling now, dealing with her finances and her emotions. I hope that's true. I really do. I don't hate her. Not anymore. But I've stopped making space in my life for people who only show up when they want something. And I've learned that I don't need to forgive anyone on their timeline. Healing isn't performance. It's slow, quiet work, and it's mine to do on my terms. This house, this life, I'm building it brick by brick. With memories, with boundaries, with purpose. For the first time ever, I feel like the main character in my own story. Not the background figure. Not the second best. Just me. And my grandmother's love? It's in every corner of this home. In every decision I make. In every student that scholarship helps. Her voice isn't gone. It's louder than ever. And through it all, I know she'd be proud. A year ago, if you had told me that my life would be unrecognizable today, I would have laughed, tired and bitter. Back then, I was just trying to survive the storm, one angry text and sleepless night at a time. But now, I'm building something entirely new. Something mine. Last month, I made the biggest decision of my life. I left my corporate job. It was a good job, stable, well-paying, full of security. But it never lit a fire in me. I was good at it, sure, but it never felt like me. I always had this dream tucked away, just out of reach, gathering dust in the back of my mind. The dream of starting my own business. One focused on financial literacy and empowerment. Especially for young women. Especially for people like me, who were never taught how to manage money, plan for the future, or even believe they deserve financial independence. It never felt realistic before. But now, I have the tools. I have the resources. And more than anything, I have the why. So I'm doing it. I've invested $100,000 of inheritance into starting my company, something I've named Grounded Wealth. It's a consultancy aimed at helping people build financial confidence from the ground up. No condescending lectures. No corporate lingo. Just real-world guidance rooted in empathy and experience. Because I know what it's like to be told, figure it out yourself. And I also know what it's like when someone believes in you. I've hired a business coach, worked with a branding agency to develop our message, designed a curriculum tailored for first-generation college students, single moms, and young professionals trying to break free from debt cycles. My goal isn't just to help people with budgets. It's to shift mindsets, to rewrite the scripts we've been handed. And here's the wild part. My grandmother was an entrepreneur too. I didn't know this until Aunt Helen told me. After Grandpa died young, Grandma opened a small bookkeeping business from her kitchen table. This was back in the 70s, when women were rarely encouraged to do much beyond raise children and keep house. But she ran that business for almost 20 years. Quietly, successfully, on her own terms. It's funny how legacies find their way back around. I like to think she'd be proud of how I'm using what she left me. Not just to build a better life for myself, but to create something that helps others do the same. And the work has already started. I've run 3 workshops at local community centers. The last one was packed, standing room only. One woman came up to me afterward, crying, saying no one had ever explained money in a way that didn't make her feel stupid. She said it was the first time she left a financial seminar feeling hopeful instead of ashamed. That's what I want to create, over and over again. Hope, for others, and for myself. I've also carved out a space in Grandma's house as a home office. It overlooks the backyard where a cherry tree still blossoms. I hung her old wall clock above my desk. It ticks softly, a reminder that time moves on, but meaning stays. The house feels different now. It's no longer a place frozen in grief. It's alive again. filled with plans and phone calls and the occasional chaos of learning to run a business from scratch. But underneath it all, there's peace. Not the kind that's quiet because no one's talking, but the kind you fight for, the kind you build. And while I'm no longer responding to Sophie's outbursts or my parents' guilt trips, I am choosing, carefully, how to move forward. My dad has started showing up in small, meaningful ways. He helped me hang shelves in the new office. He sends links to small business grants. He even sat through one of my practice workshops in the living room, nodding along like he was proud. My mom is still cautious, but warmer. She dropped off a plant last week with a note that said, "For your new beginnings, we're not the perfect family. We never were. But I'm no longer waiting for them to become something they're not. I've accepted who they are, and I've made peace with who I am because of it. This business, this house, this path I'm walking, it's the result of so many years of swallowing pain, working in silence, and trying to prove I was worth something. And now, I don't have to prove anything. I know my worth, and I'm building something that doesn't just belong to me, but grows beyond me. All because one woman, with quiet strength and unwavering love, made sure I'd never have to keep fighting for scraps at someone else's table. Now, I've got a seat at my own. It's been exactly 1 year since my grandmother passed. 12 months. 52 weeks of transformation, grief, quiet victories, painful truths, and unexpected beginnings. And today, I want to share where I've landed. The scholarship I started in her name, what began as a small gesture, has now grown into something bigger than I ever imagined. The fund has already helped 3 students begin their college journeys. I've remained anonymous as the donor, but the school sends me their letters. One of the students, a young woman studying engineering, wrote that the scholarship meant she could afford to say yes to opportunities she would have had to turn down, research projects, study groups, leadership programs. She said it gave her the breathing room to dream. Reading her letter, I felt something crack open inside me. Not sadness, not anger, but pride. The kind of pride that comes not from ego, but from alignment. From knowing that a hard, painful journey created something beautiful on the other side. And every time I read those letters, I see my grandmother's handwriting. Her voice whispering, "You're doing good, sweetheart. Keep going." My business, Grounded Wealth, has officially launched. I've hosted 7 workshops, signed my first private clients, and just got invited to speak at a local women's empowerment conference. I've learned more in the past 6 months than I did in 6 years of corporate work. Not just about business, but about people, about resilience, about how financial literacy can be the difference between surviving and thriving. And I love it. Not just the work, but what it represents. Freedom, purpose, something that is 100% mine, not handed to me, not taken from someone else, not compromised by anyone else's expectations. Just mine. The house feels like home now. It's warm, lived in, full of plants, laughter, the smell of fresh bread on Sundays. I've hosted small gatherings, close friends, chosen family, the kind of people who don't ask for things, but show up with open hands and hearts. Even my parents have come by. Carefully, respectfully. Our relationship isn't perfect, but it's more honest than it's ever been. My father still surprises me sometimes. He started calling every week just to check in. And not once has he brought up money. Not once has he mentioned Sophie's name unless I do. My mother still guards her feelings like fine china, but she shows up in her own way. Dropping off groceries when she hears I'm busy, sending me articles about small business grants, forwarding old photos of grandma. I don't think she'll ever say the words "I'm sorry" the way I need to hear them. But sometimes, I think actions speak louder than memory. As for Sophie, we're not close, and we might never be, but something did shift. 3 months ago, she reached out for the first time, not for money, not for attention, but for closure. We met in a park. Neutral ground. She was quiet, nervous. She apologized. Truly, sincerely apologized. She admitted that she had been jealous for years, not just of the inheritance, but of my drive, my stability, my sense of self. She told me that things didn't come easy for me, even though it always looked like they did. That I worked harder than she ever wanted to admit. That she spent so much time being the center of attention that she never learned how to stand on her own. She's in therapy now, working full-time, paying off her debt slowly but surely. She's not perfect, but she's trying. And for the first time, I believe her. We're not sisters the way we used to be, but we're not enemies anymore either. And that's enough for now. Through this year, I've come to understand something I wish I had known earlier. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't have to stay in rooms where you feel small just because you were born in them. You don't have to explain your worth to people determined not to see it. And you absolutely do not have to bleed yourself dry to keep a family together that never learned how to hold you gently. What my grandmother gave me wasn't just financial freedom. It was emotional liberation. It was her final act of love, her way of saying, you don't have to keep earning your place anymore. You already belong. I think about her often when I'm working in the garden she planted. The cherry tree still blooms in the spring. I sit under it sometimes with a cup of tea and a notebook, and I feel her there. Quiet, proud. She couldn't change the way I was raised, but she made sure I wouldn't have to live in that shadow forever. And now, 1 year later, I can say this without hesitation. I am free. I am at peace. And I am living a life rooted not in resentment, but in purpose. To anyone out there fighting to be seen, to be respected, to finally claim what you deserve, I see you. Keep going. Set the boundary. Tell the truth. Protect your joy. Sometimes, the family we build means more than the one we're born into. And that's okay. This will be my last update. But this isn't the end. It's the beginning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you in the next one.